It's crafted in the highlands of Jalisco with the help of master distiller Sergio Cruz and the legendary Vivanco family. It's built with integrity, stripped of additives, and fueled by purpose far bigger than profit. Each pour funds the fight, supporting the very conservation efforts his uncle began decades ago in the Sonoran wild. This is more than tequila. It's a tribute. It's a rebellion and a legacy bottled and sealed with grit. McCauley didn't just trade in the courtroom for the Campo. He put everything on the line to make tequila roar. On this episode of Tactical Tequila Podcast with your host, Matt Wilson. If you enjoy the show, hit the like button, subscribe, and share it to your social media platforms. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. Welcome back, everyone. Matt with Tactical Tequila Podcast here, and we have a great show planned for you tonight. On tonight's show, we have McCauley Williams of Alma Del Jaguar Tequila. It's out of NOM 1414. And this isn't your average founder story. This is damn sure isn't your average tequila. McCauley Williams didn't just launch Alma Del Jaguar to compete. He launched it to confront a crowded industry full of copycats, to confront soulless bottles that never give back, and to confront the brutal truth, the Jaguar, also known as the Jaguar. Mexico's most powerful predator is disappearing. So he built a tequila that fights back. Crafted with master distiller Sergio Cruz, powered by purpose and dripping with authenticity. Alma Del Jaguar isn't just sipping smooth, it's roaring for a cause. This is the story of guts, legacy, and what it takes to put your name on the line for something wild. McCauley, welcome to the show. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, man. I think you should be our PR agent now after that intro. That was great.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you. Just to kind of dive into things, what was the spark that led to the creation of Alma Del Jaguar?
Well, we'll say too, it's perfectly cool. I just call it Jaguar, man.
Okay.
I'm proficient in Spanish and can say Alma Del Jaguar, but I like to say if Spanish isn't your native tongue, just call it Jaguar. It's spelled the same in both languages. That's the beauty of it. So I've been in the spirits industry now for coming up on 9 years. Started off in bourbon. I'm from Tennessee. I used to be an attorney, and I'll spare you the full story, which we can delve into later. But suffice it to say, I was an attorney who found a client in the vodka space that had failed. I bought that client out of liquidation, started a bourbon brand, grew it, and then learned the hard way about what it was like being a founder in this space for about 5 years, and raised a lot of money from the wrong people, and was fired and forced out of my bourbon company and left licking my wounds, wondering what I was going to do next. But I knew one thing, that I wanted to do another spirits brand. I'd really fallen in love with the space, and that I was drinking a whole lot more tequila, secretly throughout that bourbon journey. It's hot in Tennessee, man, in the summers especially. And as much as I would force trying to do summer cocktails, my wife and I found ourselves drinking a lot of tequila on the side, and just slowly kind of started to fall in love with agave spirits. And so after kind of the falling out in the bourbon space formally, I knew tequila is what I wanted to do next, from that acquired taste over time, as well as, the data pointed that, tequila was hot. It wasn't like a losing idea. And then a light bulb went off of, well, my uncle has been living in Mexico my whole life studying jaguars, and he founded, with a biologist named Carlos Lopez, the Northern Jaguar Reserve in Sonora, Mexico, which is about 100 miles south of the Arizona-Mexico border in the Sierra Madre Mountains, so close to the U.S. The largest privately managed wildlife refuge in all of Mexico, called the Northern Jaguar Reserve. And for the last 30 years, he's dedicated his life to protecting wild jaguars, studying their habitat, and preserving this 188,000 acre tract of land, because it is the northernmost breeding ground left in the world. Jaguars are actually native to the US, and today they range from Arizona down to Argentina. But this one property or series of ranches that they've acquired over the last 30 years was the northernmost left breeding ground of where the cats were actually mating. So it served as a strategic purpose. That's been kind of going on as I was doing, I'm 36, so pretty much my whole life. And so it's just kind of serendipity, if you will, of I knew how to build a spirits brand, found myself drinking more tequila. The data in the market supported that doing a tequila brand wouldn't be dumb in terms of something to dedicate my life to, and this is all I do full time. And then at the same time, my uncle happens to be living in Mexico with this amazing opportunity for me to get involved. I'd always wanted to figure out how to get involved. I just didn't know how. And this light bulb went off of what if I created my next brand, all about raising money and awareness for his life's work. He doesn't have any kids, and my cousins and I have 3 cousins. We're the closest of kin he has left, and we've become really close with our uncle. And I was like, this would be a really cool way to honor him and use a skill set that I'm passionate about and good at to do that. And just kind of lastly on that point of how this makes sense is to study and protect the northern range of jaguar habitat. It takes a binational effort of American consumers or American donors with Mexican biologists to protect these last cats in the northern range. And tequila, interestingly, is really this binational. People might not want to hear it, but it's true. It is this binational effort. Over 80% of the tequila produced in the world gets consumed here in the United States. And so there is a symbiotic relationship from the Mexican producer to the US consumer. And the US consumers would have driven all of the additive free movement. And so it just seems so analogous of this cross-border working together on a common cause, that it made a lot of sense. We looked at doing mezcal and bacanora, and that's why I kept harping on, like, is it actually economically viable? We just studied the data, and it just was not economically viable to do a mezcal or a bacanora. Realistically, here's a hot take too. I'm an open book, and I'll say some things that are straightforward, I believe to be true, but maybe others won't say. I mean, tequila is over 60%, 60 times larger of an industry than mezcal. Mezcal is not realistically to do an ancestral or artisanal mezcal is not a viable business. It is a hobby. You cannot produce enough to sell enough to pay wages for any importer. So the only way to produce a mezcal that can be economically viable is to do industrial mezcal, which I don't find to be very cool. So looking at tequila and tequila production, you can actually produce what I would consider to be an artisanal or ancestral style tequila, additive free, 100-year-old methodology, but you can produce enough volume and there's a large enough consumer base to where it's actually a real business, to where you can work on it full time and pay, to raise a family and pay your bills if you're successful, and it's, economically viable.
And so how did you land at NOM 1414 and working with Sergio Cruz?
Pure happenstance, man. So once we kind of decided, so I first told my uncle about this idea kind of sheepishly because I figured he would not like it. My thought was he was going to say, "Hey, that's great that you've been doing your bourbon thing." He's kind of had a problem by drinking too much bourbon back in the day, so I knew he was kind of off put by that. A little bit. I thought he was going to say, "Hey, you stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. If you want to come down and volunteer, that'd be great." But he instantly and immediately lit up and just like loved the idea. And I was like, wow, I can't believe he, loved the idea so much. He starts riffing on like, what are we going to call the brand? How do we do it? And so it was so exciting. And Alma Del Jaguar was born just from that initial conversation with my uncle. And so immediately I was like, all right, let's do this. I'm going to buy a one-way ticket to Guadalajara. I'm going to rent a car. You fly down to Sonora, and I'm going to line up meetings at every tequila distillery that'll meet with us. And And I put together a huge list of groups that we were going to meet with, from mostly from the bourbon world, of saying, hey, hey Bill, or hey Joe, I'm just making up names. I know that you have a portfolio or you have an importer business, and I've met you through the bourbon world, but I know you have a tequila or a mezcal or some form of Mexican import. Do you happen to know anybody that's making good tequila? Could you introduce me to people? And I set up meetings with like 25 different producers that way. And so it was viable enough to go on this trip. I thought it would be productive, and we're going to, have the tour of tequila, meet with every distillery that will meet with us. And the Vivancos were not on that list. I had never heard of Nom 1414. I'd never heard of the Vivanco family, and I certainly had never heard of Sergio Cruz. And all I knew was I was looking for a producer that could produce a tequila like Fortaleza or G4 or Ocho. I didn't know what additive-free tequila was. I'm just a whiskey guy that had won a lot of awards with our blends, and had developed a palate for good spirits, and just recognized through tasting those products and then reviews online that these are clearly the market leaders in the space. Never even heard of the term additive-free or any of that. I just could taste the purity in it. And I kept meeting with producers on that initial trip and kept saying, like, why doesn't this taste like the products that I'm looking for that taste so manipulated and artificial? It was like on that first really delve into tequila that I discovered what additives really were firsthand, in that experience of them telling me how pure the product was in these various meetings, and me being able to just, obviously taste, hey, this doesn't taste of hints of vanilla that naturally come from oak maturation. This tastes like you've literally put vanilla extract into it. What's going on? Can I just taste the pure stuff? It wouldn't let me. And then long story short is, we were very frustrated on this initial trip. We learned a lot. It was great, but it was at the point of where I guess we're going to go back home and regroup and try to figure it out. But clearly we have not met our producer. We've met a lot of amazing people. Everyone was amazing. Even these are not like villains at these bigger distilleries that use additives. They're just people trying to make a buck, maybe cutting some corners in ways that I disagree with from a business practice, but they're not bad people. It was a wonderful trip, but we were licking our wounds in disappointment back in Guadalajara at a bar called El S3E6. It's a cantina in a cool neighborhood in Guadalajara, known for having a big agave selection. And they have a huge Cascaween sign. And I'm like, hell yeah, like Cascaween, that's an amazing brand. Like, let's go here, look at all these amazing tequilas they have. Let's taste them. Maybe they'll know somebody. Worst case scenario, we can just have some drinks of good tequila. And then I showed them, just kind of after a few drinks, I started opening up as I do. I'm like, here's where we've been. How can I find a producer that will meet with me that makes tequila like Cascaween or Hey Cuatro or Ocho or Fortaleza? Because every time I reach out to those guys, they say they're not producing more brands. And they said, well, hey, we know somebody actually that produces tequila of that caliber. It's the Vivanco family of Nom 1414. We think we can get you a meeting. And it was just by talking to somebody at a bar. And that guy who owns that bar is now my director of operations for all of our Mexico side of our business. His name's Mario Guazatul, and he and his brother Danielle are like some of my closest friends now. And so it was literally pure happenstance, but it's sort of like luck created by making it, by just putting myself out there and being there. But I just kind of go into that emphasis of it more to encourage your listeners to, in whatever they're doing in their life, whether they want to get into this industry or whatever, it's just be open with people if you feel like you can trust them, and put yourself out there, do your research, and, luck may find you, kind of thing.
What do you think is probably the biggest misconception that people have when a spirits company combines with social impact?
There's not very many of them, to be honest. So through my time in the bourbon biz, I got so sick. I want to make money too, and pay my bills and provide a good life for my family. But I got so sick of it always being about, our former business was always about how can we make as much money as possible. And that was the sole motivator. That became very soul sucking. And when I studied other great entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs, even, not that was into social impact, but it was never the money that motivated him. And so I started to realize, we're just focused on all the wrong things. And if we start focusing on the things that matter, that we actually care about, maybe there's a chance that the money And the success flows from that because we're focused on something we care about and are passionate about and our consumers care about. And so there was like a really big soul searching period there when I was trying to figure this thing out. And I just really honed in on the idea of focusing in on impact, doing something bigger than me. And then I kept thinking about, because I have a 4 and 1 year old that were, at the time my daughter wasn't born, so my son was about 7 or 8 months old. Like, what legacy do I want to leave? And just being like a liquor guy that creates a product that people get drunk from, and could form bad habits from, and could have bad impact on society is not the legacy I wanted to leave. But I know that spirits can be really positive if it's in the sense of great memories, fellowship, cheer, engagement. There's a really positive side to the spirits industry, but it's like if I can also marry in a positive cause with that and leave that legacy, that can be something I can be really proud of. And then my uncle's group at the Jaguar Reserve, their biggest struggle has always been raising money and awareness. And I was like, well, I know how to raise awareness and I know how to build a brand. We'll see about the money part. But if we can marry these two things together, my passion for spirits, my desire to do something bigger than myself and to leave a legacy and to tie it in with my family's legacy through my uncle's life's work, this can be something that we can all be really proud of and ideally have a much bigger impact than us or the brand. And so I don't know that that necessarily answers your question directly, but that's just kind of emphasizing like our motive through this is born out of not having all the answers, but like a genuine sense of self-exploration, trying to find meaning to life. And I don't have all the answers sitting here, but we're trying to do the right thing, for all those reasons I just listed.
The honestly, it's a phenomenal cause that you are having so much impact on. I think the consumers that try your tequila, the majority, I would say, try it because of the social impact, because they see the story and they want to help. But inside the bottle, you have such an amazing juice, and once people actually try it, they realize that, and then it's just repeat customer after that.
So we're never going to outspend. So like, okay, if the goal with the brand, the big term goal is to first endow the Northern Jaguar Reserve. I estimate that we need around $5 million to endow the reserve. So, and that's just the beginning. And so if we're going to try to raise that amount of money through the sales of our tequila, and we also do, just to be clear, we donate, our goal is to donate 10% of our profits, but we also host fundraisers. And that's a way we can use the brand as a platform to raise more money, meaning like having events where people get together, drink, learn about tequila. It's fun. And then they want to donate and or buy merch or bid on items, auctions and stuff, is a great way that we use the brand to raise money for it. And that's how we can raise more money than we can afford to donate. So it's not just genuine. It's just like leveraging the brand platform as the vehicle to talk about and raise money for the cause. If we need to raise about $5 million, we got to sell a lot of damn tequila. I mean, like there's just no way around it. It takes a hell of a brand to just sell $5 million worth of tequila, much less be able to afford to donate it. So it's like, we got to be able to, and this is kind of why I kept harping on like scale, viable business. If we're going to do this, we want to do it right. We're never going to be able to scale, nor do we have any desire to be the next Casamigos or Don Julio, but we need to be a viable, serious brand with meaningful market share to achieve our goals. And we're not going to get there by out spending in marketing. I can't buy enough billboards. I can't pay enough celebrities. I can't do or endorse enough, the NFL or the NBA or any of that crap. So we have to win on the merits of the brand. And that starts with liquid quality in the product. And so it was imperative from the beginning. And this is kind of going back to your first question of how we found the Vivancos, of we knew two things. We needed to have the best tasting product. Like at the end of the day, forget additives, forget how it's made or whatever. It has to taste amazing, and it has to objectively taste amazing, not subjectively, not just for geeks. And what I found the amazing thing and the amazing opportunity in the tequila space with additive free is that the additive-free products and the well-made products actually objectively to like my mother, who's never had tequila, taste better than the commercial product. That's not always the case. Look in like the meat industry and other industries with candies and desserts. Oftentimes, the more manipulated, the more objectively better tasting it is. And so it's a different sales pitch. The cool thing about this space is the sales pitch is not only is it better for the environment, not only is it the more traditional, but it's objectively, unquestionably tastes better. We know we had to have a better tasting product. And then secondly, if we're going to stand for environmental conservation, we actually have to walk the walk. So we need to find somebody that can produce a damn fine tequila, and they have to do so sustainably in methodologies that don't harm the environment, because we cannot rob Peter to pay Paul. We can't destroy the environment or do terrible industrial production practices in Jalisco just to help the environment in Sonora. That wouldn't make any sense. And so that's what made the Vivanco such a perfect fit, and the whole serendipity and the whole happenstance and coincidence of it so magical, of that, how we found them. And that there's really only about 10 producers that meet that qualification. And I already rattled off several others that were either booked or just don't make outside brands. So it was like a true blessing and like just in luck that we found them. I'll stop there. I can ramble, as you can tell, and it is 10 o'clock on a Friday here. So yes, I have had a few drinks of tequila.
It's all good. Can you walk us through the moment during production where Sergio's craft sort of just like changed everything for the juice inside?
Yeah. So interestingly, and I think it's really important because I think Sergio Cruz gets all of the limelight. So for the first meeting, I never even met Sergio Cruz, didn't know he existed. I only met Sergio Vivanco. That's who I was introduced to, and he's the patriarch of the family that owns the place. And he used to be the master distiller. And so, originally it was just, I'm doing business with Sergio, but a different Sergio Vivanco. And at a lot of tequila distilleries, even at 1414, the way it typically works, and I'm not going to say any brands that I think do this or anything out of 1414, because a lot of great folks, a lot of great brands, but what typically works is we make, 1 to 3 different profiles. This is at most of the different, any distillery. Hey, Gringo shows up wanting to start a brand. We make 3 different Blancos, Matt. Here's Blanco 1, Blanco 2, Blanco 3. You taste them and tell us which one you like. We make 3 different Reposados. We make 3 different Añejos. You're welcome to select any of these 3 or any combination of these 9, and we'll slap your label on it and bottle it. And if you want to get really crazy, yeah, you can blend it. But these are the house profiles we make. And that wasn't going to work for us because we really wanted to, just having been in the spirits industry before, I really wanted to have control over some degree of the production process. And Sergio Vivanco in the first meeting was just like, hey, I love this cause. I love the whole passion for what you guys are doing. Let's figure out how to make this different and make it embody the concept of the Jaguar and like have the strength, the ferocity, and grace of the cat itself. And we need to spend some time designing our base Blanco to meet that qualification. I think you'll think our house profiles are great, but I don't necessarily think they meet what this brand could be to embody it, the full, ethos of the Jaguar. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't know what he means, but I think I know what he means. This is really cool. And really cool that he's affording us the opportunity to start from scratch in the field, crafting step by step our process. So it wasn't even necessarily like I was going to bring that up, that I wanted that, but it was amazing that he started there. And then in the next meeting, he's like, come back. I think it was like a month or so before I could get back. He's like, I need to introduce you to our master distiller. I think Sergio Cruz wasn't there that first time. He's like, I'm going to introduce you to Sergio Cruz, and you're going to work with him to design your base Blanco. At the time, I knew enough based on having been in this industry that I didn't know shit about making a tequila. I knew I knew what I liked and didn't like, and I know how to sell a spirit, I know how to build a brand, but I knew enough to like, oh wow, there's a lot to this. And also just inherently, nothing against the Vivancos, but any producer, is going to have an inherent bias to make the path of least resistance, the product that's easiest to make for them. So I hired a consultant and friend, Adam Fodor, the founder of the International Tequila Academy, because I'd been taking his classes. And it didn't start off as a consultant. It was more like, hey, Adam, I'm starting this amazing project. I would love for you to help me if you're willing, and would love to pay you, for your expertise in this, because you academically know all the different levers we can pull to make this tequila our own and unique, in terms of having studied at every different distillery down there, like what sort of temperature changes in the oven, which fields, etc. And Adam is fluent in English, and Sergio Cruz is not. And I am proficient in Spanish, but when talking highly technical, like math, that's really where like my Spanish struggles the most, is in like the really technical language of like, because when you're talking in casual conversation, you get by with synonyms, right? But that doesn't work when you're talking in math. Like, you can't just synonym in the exact ratios of things, right? It needs to be the actual literal translation, and it needs to come from somebody with expertise. So Adam came in, and Adam and I designed the theory behind the brand, meaning we mapped out, without Sergio, without the Vivancos involved, the theory of what we wanted to achieve to bring out the ethos of the Jaguar in the taste of the liquid. And that meant we wanted a lot of terroir, we wanted elements of spice, and we wanted floral. And I was adamant that I wanted there to be a brininess and a citrus component to the product, because I knew that's what makes you want to continue to drink it. And I'm like, I don't know necessarily what in the hell we're going to do to bring out these things, but I'm not going to just trust the distillery to do it either. We're going to sit there and go step by step. And so we mapped out our process, and then we met with Sergio Cruz. And he's like, all right, I have a number of ideas with the limitations of our equipment of how to achieve what you're talking about. And we went through round after round after round after round of samples. And through that process, though, is where Adam is an academic and is really smart and knows tequila. And now at this point, I think knows how to produce tequila. But Sergio is not only an academic and an expert, but it's like a maestro instrument player, or like somebody that can play the entire symphony at once themselves, like a one-man band, in the sense that he knows his equipment like an organ player that plays all these different notes of all these different things, of which different little nuances of his equipment are going to bring out certain flavors. And that's what was so truly amazing to watch, of where we had said on our process map, hey, in order to convert our wild yeast ferments into more floral citrus notes, the wild yeast ferment's going to bring out more spice, more earthen tones and terroir. And Adam, through his studies, was like, if we distill this to a higher ABV, this is just one example, that will convert all those flavors into more floral citrus. I think we should distill to 65% ABV, which is way higher than most people do on the second run. And it should scientifically achieve these results. And that's where Sergio came in and was like, hey, look, agreed on the concept, but our stills on the second run can't go that high. We're going to tap out at 58, 59% ABV. And he's like, but I also think I can tweak your idea on the fermentation and do this and this to achieve your result. And then like watching him do that and how casual he was about it was what really proved to me that he is bar none like one of the best tequila producers of all time, not just living today. And it's a level of art. It's not even science. So there's definitely all science behind this, but there's like a true, that term maestro tequilero fits in, because he is playing the instruments of his distillery at that kind of maestro musical level. Rambling again, I'm passionate about this topic.
That's great. And the listeners definitely want to hear all the nuances that comes with your tequila, comes with any additive-free tequila, because everybody is now more concentrated on what's in the glass. And not only are they concentrated on what's in the glass, but they also want to know the story behind it. And the story is what makes them select it further in, their sipping sessions and their parties and what have you. It's those things, because it's a conversation piece that now they can say, hey, try this tequila. By the way, it helps support Jaguars, is made at a great family distillery. They start to learn more about the tequilas. And I think it's just so amazing just how like the tequila industry has just more or less exploded over the last few years.
Yeah, it's a renaissance. The cool thing is it's not an explosion in change. I mean, there is change, but the change is a renaissance, like change of back to how it was made 100 years ago. And that's what's so cool. It's back to the authenticity. But what's so cool is, like, look, we've all been to Whole Foods. Everybody's had a wife or a friend or somebody that was like, hey, try this vegan or grass-fed product, whatever it was. And there's cool branding and it's got a great cause and you want to believe in it more than anything, but it just tastes like shit. Like, we've all experienced that in one way or another. I'm not going to pick on any one product, but the amazing thing about the additive free tequila thing is that this is one of the limited examples. There's a few others of where the actual best made product, the best for the environment, the most authentic product, the least manipulated, objectively, is a better product. And that's what's so cool. And that's what's so frustrating to me. And really the only thing that's frustrating to me about the additive tequilas is they are cutting corners, and it would be fine. Look, if Casamigos and Don Julio were $15.99 a fifth, I think that's great. That's right where they belong. And there's a market for that product. Every product doesn't have to be additive free. It's too expensive to produce. What's frustrating is when people produce a highly manipulated product that objectively tastes worse, and through clever marketing and market leverage, convince the consumer, dupe the consumer into believing that it is expensive, premium, and better. And that is where I get worked up.
So talking about like how you get worked up and the whole process of making tequila, how hands-on are you with the production of the tequila?
So I'm the CEO of my company and very hands-on in the direction, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm the one loading the oven, running the still or the bottling line. And that's what we found, a partner and production partner. And that's where the Vivanco family, their company, the mastery of Sergio Cruz come in. If we work together, you can ask them. You're welcome to ask them. I'm extraordinarily opinionated, I think, as it's coming across probably in this interview. And I'm constantly tasting samples. Um, where I am way more hands-on is in anything that touches a barrel, because that's where my background came pre-bourbon. But yeah, I only know from my limited years of study. I've only been at this for 3.5 years, of how to, look at a field and tell you which agave is ripe. That's where we have to rely on the Vivanco family who grow the agave, and Sergio Cruz and his purveying team to select which agaves come from, which ones we harvest from the field, which fields we harvest. But once it gets in a barrel, almost all of it's from barrels that we send down through meticulous cooperage management. And, most of our blends are all of my notes. So I'll get in the little samples of all the different barrels on our repo and añejo and sit there and meticulously blend it and then send it back, and or go down myself and be like, here's the barrels we're going to blend in this batch. And then I do like say, hey, Sergio, do you agree? Like, here's mine, you put yours up, but let's see if they match or don't match. And it is interesting sometimes when our palates disagree. One thing I have found is that I'm from Tennessee. I'm a gringo through and through, and I'm designing a product that I think I can sell to the American market. I don't sell my product in Arandas yet, and so I'm designing for the palate that I think of the U.S. consumer, which is different. Not like, so the old way of thinking, the stale way of thinking, the additive way of thinking is that the American palate just wants sweeter, more manipulants, blah, blah, blah. But I am designing for the consumer base that I think is here. And so it is interesting sometimes when we'll disagree on blinds of when we do blends and like different ones get selected. And I think sometimes it comes down to who the target consumer is, which is just an interesting study in the whole thing. Look, we can talk all day. I'm happy to answer any questions about the like the genesis story, how we created it, the founding story. But one thing I find kind of tired about like these interviews is it's always retroactive looking. Hey, how did you do this one thing at one instance in time? How did it begin? When I don't think about that very much. I'm living in the present and dealing with like the litany of a million problems that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, and only thinking about one thing, which is the future and the growth. So let's dive into it, but recognize that like as an actual operator in this space, I spend zero time reflecting about how we started it or what we did in the past. And it's 100% on like where it's going and how we manage cash flow, how I drive sales. And it's the non-sexy side of the business that we focus on, and the stuff that I guess a lot of listeners don't even think about and frankly appreciate about the business, which is how in the I'm not going to cuss,
Oh,
do
you can cuss on the channel
do
if you
you
want.
compete against the bigger, more well-capitalized brands? A number of even the additive-free brands are owned by mega conglomerates and or have taken money from the largest families in the tequila industry to back them. These are tens to 20s of millions of dollars in funding, and we have to, with a much more limited budget, compete in the market space. And realistically, the way we compete against them has nothing to do with our founding story or cause. It's through like killing ourselves in the market, grinding, constantly traveling, meeting with every single retailer, meeting with every single bar. You can see the tired marks under my eyes because it's a grind, and that's what we do. And I think a lot of like people just don't appreciate like plenty of people that start a brand in this space do so because they're independently wealthy and it's a hobby. We are not one of those groups, and there's a lot of other groups that are not those groups. This is our livelihood, and it is a freaking grind. It's not romantic. It's way cooler from the outside looking in, and it's just a grind because we're passionate about it. Sorry to derail your question.
No. And honestly, to me, what makes a great tequila is the passion behind it. It's not only, it's everything from the humidors to um the person that bottles it, the person that labels it, the distiller, the master distiller. It's all of those things that make a great tequila. The juice
100%.
is going to be there if it's quality crafted, but it's the passion that you see from the families of the distilleries, the families of those that are actually doing the work and going out there doing the 10, 12-hour days of harvesting and things of that nature to make such a great spirit.
Agreed. But the way I think about it is like, all right, so at 1414, how many brands are there? You probably know better than I do. There's at least like 15 brands
I believe so.
distributed in the US, right? Like we're the top brand by volume and sales from 1414 in the market. And it's not because that the humidors worked any harder on it or Sergio Cruz worked any harder on it. And I'm not going to claim that's because like we worked any harder on it, but it's there's a lot of amazing tequila that ends up in a bottle that never gets in front of a consumer, and it takes the entirety. I want to do this montage because I thought about doing this of the full scale of the team it takes to do this, not just the actual employees of any one of the things, but even down to like the totally unsexy role of like the accountant or the lawyer or the insurance guy. And you add all like up each little sliver of what it takes to get there. And it's like 250 faces of just like this full scope of people that don't necessarily know each other, but they're all kind of helping out because they believe in this cause. And the cause isn't necessarily just the Jaguars. This is other brands too. It's not like us, but it's just like far more encompassing of people that feel like they're stakeholders in this, from discounting their rates as an accountant or doing that solid as a printing company to discount posters or something. And it just becomes crazy. Like, cause I'm always like sitting there looking at like my text, and it's like, I'm always like, how am I getting like 450 text messages or Slack messages from all these different people? Cause that's like what it actually takes, like all the way through the process. And, this is not meant in any way to belittle, like, you're totally right. And the totally romantic side of everything is what happens to get the bottle, like the juice in the bottle. I just think nobody ever talks about what happens next. And it's not meant to, like, pat me on the back or anything, but it's like, to me, that's where things get interesting, is like the whole thing is like, how in the hell does it start from, a pup or a seed that someone planted in that red clay to like actually ending up in your glass at that bar, or actually ending up in that bottle that you take home from the package store. And it's wild the number of hands it touches. And people that maybe don't have any ownership interest, but they feel like they're a stakeholder because they've done something of through effort or extra work or discounting their services or whatever to make it happen. And it's crazy. It's not just our brand, it's all these craft brands. It's because people are buying into the movement, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, I agree with you. Thinking about what you said as far as like doing this montage, those mosaics where you add pictures of places you've been and it creates this one image. It would be so amazing to use the faces of everyone that touches the tequila
Yes.
and create either an image of the Jaguar or an
Yes.
image of, something tequila related, whether the bottle or the agave. That would
You
be an
tied it together
amazing.
for me. I kept thinking of a video, but we just had a literal epiphany moment. Yes, that is what we have to do. I'm now going to do that because that would be so freaking cool. It needs to be done
You gotta,
because
you
I
got,
think it's mind blowing.
you got to use this face here.
Yeah. Well, hey, and what, no, but for real, all the podcasters, every influencer that does a post, it's nuts what it takes, and just
Oh
how
yeah.
many people it takes buying in to create this kind of flywheel that lifts a brand. And I'm like, the coolest thing about building a brand, separate from anything that I personally have done, just brands in general, is how it becomes bigger than the founder, bigger than the initial mission, bigger than the story. It's like a child. It like takes on a life of its own. And it's so wild to be out there in the wild in a bar or liquor store and like see someone interact with my product in a way that I didn't anticipate, or like hear their honest critique or honest feedback. It's just it's because it becomes its own thing that's now like living out there, and it's so cool. And that like really keeps you going, and like it's inspiring.
Yeah, I agree. And it's the same thing with doing a podcast. This is bigger than me. It's getting the information out to the consumer. It's being able to let them decipher what they want to drink, whether or not they like the cause or whether or not they like the story behind it. But it allows them to gather the information that helps them make an informed decision.
Agreed. Sorry, let's get back to your plan. I've derailed and
No, no,
and
no.
digressed into another deal. I'm not trying to disrupt. I think come
No,
on,
no.
throw it off.
This is fluid as it gets, and wherever the conversation goes is where we go.
Love it.
But let me ask you, has there ever been a time that you questioned it all, brand, mission, vision? Is there anything that you've said, you know what, I'm just gonna walk away?
Oof, never that far, but yeah, definitely doubt, dude, creeps in all the time at a number of levels. From the most obvious level is like, hey, can I pull this off? Can I do this? Like, are we capable of this? Like, is our team going to deliver to make this happen? And then just within the ethos of the mission based brand is like, it is extremely expensive to build a damn tequila brand, and cash flow is a bitch of financing the inventory, the cash flow cycles of making a deposit and me not collecting from my distributor for 180 days, even on Blanco. Now then stretch that out 180 days
Wow.
plus 6 months on Repo, 180 days plus a year on Añejo. It is a freaking mathematical financial puzzle to figure out how to finance this. And a lot of smaller brands don't face it because, again, it's a hobby, because they're financially wealthy, or they're just doing this part time because they're maintaining their day job. If you go in full time, it is a effing beast to try to figure out how to get to be cash flow positive, profitable, and get over it. And then you layer in and you're like, dude, I can't, how do I make payroll this month and pay vendors, much less make a donation to something? And like, so yeah, self-doubt, despair, some serious dark and lonely nights where I've drank too much and gotten nervous creep in. But that's where the sun rises and you're like, no, like, we're not gonna give up today. We're gonna figure this thing out and we're gonna do it at all costs. I got food poisoning in Mexico in October of 2023, and I had 5 intestinal surgeries that took a year to recover.
Oh,
So I'm like
wow.
literally killing myself out here for this, and that's because I got really bad food poisoning. I didn't address it, didn't slow down. It led to such irritation, explosive diarrhea, terrible, gross, everything that you get when you get that food poisoning. But I didn't realize that my intestines tore during that process, and then it got infected, and then I had an internal abscess, and it almost killed me.
Oh,
Um,
man.
and that's because was like, well, I can't stop. I have all these meetings. I got to get meet with my glass factory. I got to meet with my label guys. I got to meet with the Vivancos. Blah 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 blah. And yeah, we're out here doing it, man. Like it's a grind, and you're catching me too. Just to be clear, listeners, everybody, you're catching me like in a particular grind phase of we're 2 years in, honeymoon phase is worn off. Like we're like just balls deep in it right now, and so catch me in 6 months, and my mind, my headspace and mindset's gonna be totally different. But again, I promise, like the one thing I always am, I am transparent and authentic to a fault. And so if I come across like an asshole or something, I apologize. But I'm just trying. Like I just get really tired. I listen to nothing but podcasts on entrepreneurs and other business owners, not necessarily in the space. And it's really boring when it's all contrived, like marketing, PR, pre-planned BS. Because I want to hear what it's like actually like and get some sort of insight. So I'm going to try to offer that through this to you of just being extremely real. It's not for the faint of heart.
And being extremely real and kind of piggybacking off of my previous question, when it all turns to shit and you feel like giving up, how do you push through it mentally?
Okay, so like I said, I'm all in. I have put every single dollar I have into this business, borrowed money. I'm in the hole considerably. And I've raised $5 million from every person I know in my family. So my family, we can't put up $5 million. We've put in some, and every single person I know to finance this thing. So like my house, my kids, our mission, my employees, all of the investors. Those were not like some rich guy writing a $5 million check. That's a shit ton of $25,000 and $50,000 checks. So there's just an amazing amount of people that have believed in me and this mission, and it's to the point of like failure is not an option kind of thing. Of like I'm so all in that there is no way but forward kind of thing. And so that's what drives me. And first and foremost, like I'm an entrepreneur through and through. I just want to make that clear. I was the kid that sold candy out of his locker, uh, and devised any scheme ever to sell things and make money and create businesses. And this is like business number 8. I had a drone business. I was the first person to import a commercial drone into the state of Tennessee to film agricultural product. Like first person to import an industrial drone to Tennessee. My use case was to film agricultural products because I was going to sell the data to New York and Chicago to the commodities markets. And then I met these guys at a investment firm, and they're like, "Hey, that's really cool, man. But we have this other group that have satellites." And they've raised like $4 billion. So we're going to buy their data. It's awesome that you got a couple $100K worth of drones. So anyways, I've just learned a lot of lessons, been burned a lot of time, but I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and like failure's not an option. And if we fail, we're going to pick up and start over again. Cause I just love creating businesses.
So then talking about starting over and creating businesses, is there a scar that physically or emotionally that has made its way into the DNA of Alma Del Jaguar?
Yeah, man. I started the fastest growing craft bourbon brand and then was fired and forced off the board and voted out of the company I started. Left with nothing. I'm still an owner. My partners didn't buy my shares. I got no severance and got $0 and had to liquidate all of my investment accounts and borrow money to start this business. So F yeah, there's scars. Um, I'm past like the like there was a point where I was like really like upset and like the anger of that phase fueled me. And then like that was that soul searching phase of wanting to become like something better. And that was really good. And ultimately, like now with hindsight, it's a blessing. And it's like, it's cute to say like, oh, well, of course you're going to say it's a blessing because you're doing better now. But it really was because I learned so many important lessons through that journey. And I'm one person, and I think a lot of people are such that like the only real lessons in life you have to learn the really hard way. And I learned a lot of lessons the really hard way, and that's made me like a better father, a better husband, and a whole lot better business person. And now like I'm motivated not from the sense of frustration from that, but of like I feel like I've overcome that you know hardship or adversity or whatever, and now it's like the cool thing, and that's why I say I'm blessed, is like I'm now actually getting to apply those lessons that I have learned, not just being motivated by like, I got to prove myself, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, man, like, it's a lot. Again, I've been at this for 9 years and y'all only have heard about the 2 years since we've been selling the tequila. So there was 7 years of blood, sweat, and tears and a whole lot of lessons learned the hardest possible way before that.
When a consumer cracks the bottle for the first time, what truth are you hoping that they taste with the first sip or every sip?
I like the open-endedness of that question. So I actually, we've like played around with the sales pitch, right? Like initially, because of our passion for the actual conservation, the mission, and like that rah-rah cause, that was our leading pitch. Like we would start with that. We since have found that that is actually not the best starting argument. So as a lawyer, I've learned or was taught and I've learned that in any form of argument or convincing of telling a story, you actually always want to start with your strongest argument first, not close with it. You start with your strongest and then it gets weaker and weaker. In terms of the reason to buy our product, we start with the strongest argument, which is the pedigree and liquid quality. This is an amazingly produced additive-free tequila from the Vivanco family, a fifth-generation producer, and Maestro Tequilero Sergio Cruz. We produce it entirely sustainably. We're the first liquor brand ever to use 100% recycled packaging, recycled glass, agave fiber labels, repurposed cork stoppers, recycled cardboard box. And the reason we care about all of that so much, about doing it the right way and delivering the best product, is because our main mission isn't even selling tequila. It's endowing the largest privately managed wildlife reserve in Mexico. And so it becomes the closing argument, which is like the buy-in to the liquid quality and sort of the overall mission for quality and doing things the right way. And then the hook or the one that really gets you is like oh, wow, I get it now. But when we worded it the other way, consumers really didn't get it. And it's a much easier to can talk about the Jaguar conservation after they've already had that sip and are like, yeah, fuck yeah, this is really good. Actually, this is amazing. And wait, there's more. There's Jaguar conservation. There's sustainability. So we've really found that that's the way to pitch this. That's the reason. The reason to drink the additive-free tequilas is the liquid quality, the provenance, how it's made, and the reason to choose ours over any of the others is because we're the only ones with this mission.
I know that we talked about it a little bit earlier in the show, but as far as like legacy and everything goes, 5 years from now, are you building an empire, saving the species, or proving that you can do both without compromise?
The latter, man. It's empire is maybe not the right word, but I want to build a large, profitable business. I think the future of mission-based companies is not in the for-profit sector. I've been on a number of nonprofit boards They're horribly mismanaged. The reason, and there's obviously some amazing nonprofit organizations. This is like a gross cliche or whatever, but very many nonprofit organizations, I would say the vast majority, are horribly mismanaged. And the reason is because no one's held accountable. There's no stakeholders. There's just, you show up to the board meeting, no one's read the board minutes, no one's prepared, because the only thing motivating them is their passion. That's not enough. There have to be real economic consequences. And I think companies like Patagonia, which is our North Star, have proven that the future of mission-based companies are for-profit companies with a core mission, because they're managed like a for-profit company for overall shareholder gain, et cetera, but also sticking to like a bylaw mission. And so that's how we've set this up. And I think we're seeing more and more of this kind of come in the post-COVID world of companies kind of realign into realizing like profit and doing good are not bad. And that's where the cool thing about what we do with sourcing 100% recycled packaging is I also get all of our packaging from within Mexico. Now, some of the smaller craft brands may also do the same, but I would say 95% of alcoholic beverage brands, not just in liquor, any alcoholic beverage brand, wine, beer, liquor, source their components from China. Glass, labels, stoppers, seals. Not only is there the political issues, blah, 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 but there's the carbon footprint of shipping it across the ocean. There's the moral issues with the sweat labor and the lack of ethical standards going on and production practices there. It's through and through. We chose to produce everything in Mexico. We do it all sustainably, and it's all recycled. And I mention that because it becomes a sustainable business practice of ours. We don't just do it because of the mission. I now get to brag about that to you and your listeners, and it becomes a positive marketing component. That's not my main motive, but I just point that out because I'm able to use my ergonomics and production processes as a marketing tactic now. And then that becomes sustainable for my business of why I eat the increased cost of doing it that way. And I emphasize that because I want to encourage other business owners to think about that, of looking at the bottom line holistically and not in one single instance. And if you offset the potential gain and goodwill from the consumer and the marketing goodwill you gain, it becomes overall a net profit to the bottom line. And I say all of this because I think a lot of people think that conservation, caring, missions are like a bleeding heart sacrifice. And that's not how it has to be. And that is not sustainable as a business practice. And that's what most nonprofits are formed on. If you can prove that alignment of the two, that's when it becomes this like helix bound, expandable, amazing thing that can really scale and do so positively. So I'm just all about talking about like all of these things that bring the brand together and trying to build the right company. And at the end of the day, I think more so than even the Jaguar conservation singularly is we want to be known as a company that does things the right way and never compromises values for a buck and always over delivers on quality relative to price.
And, I think that's why so many consumers, they respect your brand because of the transparency and because of the advocacy that you have put forth, not only for Jaguars, but information being put out for additive-free tequilas. I think that's why you are such a respected brand.
That's amazing. The coolest thing is that people have actually responded to this. And like I get on here and just rant, and it's not pre-planned or that like some PR person's like, hey, the data shows this is going to be positively received. It's just me and our team. And it's really cool to see that people respond to it. A quick brag. Here's my like LinkedIn post via shout out to myself. And this, every LinkedIn post is always a braggadocious self-aggrandizing thing. It blew our mind. We didn't ever have access to Nielsen data until May 1st, when some friends in the industry started sharing some reports with us. And we're the fastest growing tequila brand in the country, over $40 a bottle. we were floored. I mean, we knew we were grinding. I thought we were failing, to be honest, because we were setting such ridiculous goals for ourselves. And that's not BS. That's not me just saying that to like get a thing for the entrepreneurial listeners. It's like, we really felt like we were just totally missing the mark. What the hell is happening? And we see this data and it's just like, wait, what? Like, how could we possibly be the fastest growing? Like, we were, 300% off of our goal for the year. How could we be this? And it was so humbling because it meant that people were actually responding, and people that we've never met had listened to podcasts like this or seen posts and heard about it and were responding positively. And like, our whole team were just taken aback by it. And it was such a humbling thing. But now there's some pressure. Now we gotta live up to that and keep it going. But yeah, it's just awesome, man. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, and just like a steam engine, I see no stopping. Like, I just see full bore ahead for you guys. Even like
What you got?
this
Single
single
barrel?
barrel by
Where'd you get that one?
so this is a J Bear
It's a good one.
single barrel, and it's phenomenal. And I've had J Bear on the show. He was actually in the studio. And great guy, phenomenal. But that is probably one of my favorite single barrels that I've ever tasted.
You're a French oak
And
guy. That's a
yeah,
French oak barrel.
yeah. And I was blown away by it. But honestly, like, one of the best high proofs, your Nocturna is amazing.
Yeah, that is hey, there's a great example of Sergio. I don't know how much time we have, whatever, but that is a great example of Sergio
We have as
Cruz's
much
genius.
time as you want.
The Nocturna was an idea I had. So originally, when we designed the base Blanco, we wanted it to be all wild fermentation. That was the original process map that Adam and I designed, namely Adam's idea. And what we found is when we dilute the wild yeast strain tequilas below about 42 or 3% down to 40% to be a base Blanco, our entry proof product, it loses a lot of its magic. And I can't really describe it other than it's really it's not the finish, it's the front and mid part of the palate just fall flat. So there's no hook that draws you in. Like there is on that Nocturna, where you get the sweetness, the creaminess, and it all just is amazing. Because originally the Nocturna was the original Blanco. We were going to bottle at 80 proof, and
Wow.
I think we tasted it at 48% is how the samples were that day, and we're all like high-fiving after like a million rounds of samples and like, this is it. And it was actually on September 16th, so Independence Day, and then we went out. It was the day before, the 15th, and we went out and like partied all weekend. Had my liter bottle and like drank it till 2 a.m. and like passed out on the couch at my Airbnb. I was like, fuck yeah, we did it. This is it. And then after the festivities ended, the distillery had prepared for us to take home the 80 proof samples, 40% ABV. When I got home, sobered up, I was like, wait, what the fuck? This isn't it. Like, what happened? Like, and I had the 48% and I had 105, 110 proof. I had the 55, the 48, and then the 40. I was like, wait, it's lost everything. Like, what's happened here? So then we went back to the drawing board, and we're like, how do we get more of the rich creaminess and the sweetness of the agave profile back into it? And that's when we came up with the idea of using a champagne yeast component, which is like the Vivanco's, one of their house
The
profiles.
proprietary.
Yep, their proprietary house profile. And it started by just blending their profile into ours of like, oh wow, like just dicking around, messing around, trying things like, oh wow, this is working. This is adding back in what was missing, still at 40% ABV. And then originally it was like, all right, what if we did 50-50? And like, let's look at going back to the drawing board there. And that's where Sergio Cruz is like, no, try this. And he had samples of 20% champagne to 80% wild. And something about that ratio, I don't know if that would work at a different distillery, different processes, but with our production process, that's where it brought that balance back into the 40%. So our base Blanco, our Repo, and Añejo are all made with 80% wild yeast, 20% champagne. And that is only because of the balance achieved at the lower alcohol percents. And so after we got off the ground, I was like, well, we got to bring to market the original Blanco. That's what we were all like freaked out over. And then it's like, well, what ABV do we do it at? Of tequila, we can't go over 55%. And realistically, at 55%, it's like a little hot. Like you would love it, I love it, but like it's just not approachable to as wide of an audience. And so like, all right, let's dilute this a little bit. It also opens up and you start to get a different bouquet and different notes. And so we started going back to that original 48% that was just like a random something that the distillery production team chose just to show a digression from 55, 48, 40. I was like, well, that's not really doing it for me either. Let's look at the higher octane. I at least want to be over, if it's going to be high proof, it needs to be over 100 proof. And so we were playing around between like 100, so 50% ABV and then like 52 ABV. And then I thought it showed really well closer to that 101. I think some of the samples we actually truly loved were at like in between 100 and 101. Was like, we can't be at like some totally obscure decimal proof or something. And then I was like, well, 101 just has a ring to it. And then maybe because of Wild Turkey and just other brands that have like brought in like high proof is so because we loved it around that proof, I was like, let's look at 101. I was like, what really encapsulates like the wild nature of the wild yeast? And then I was like, well, all the photographs that we get on the reserve or on motion triggered trail cameras, the Jaguars are way more active at night. There's very little photographs during the daylight. It's like, let's do an inverted label of our original label to where it's black and white, like the black and white images we get at the reserve. And then let's call it Nocturna because Jaguars are nocturnal hunters. All this just starts like ripping through it. And that's how Nocturna was born. And then through the various expressions that just trial runs, when we were first designing this over the first year, I kept noticing how different it was during different seasons of production. Because when you're just using wild yeast, which means, we're literally letting the fermenters sit open to Mother Nature and air is flowing through. So like what air is flowing through, what pollen's in the air, what yeast is in the air is going to be highly impacted by seasonality. I was like, let's showcase that seasonality. And so with Nocturna, we just produce in spring and fall because those are the two biggest juxtapositions in the calendar in Jalisco where we can find of wild yeast profiles, namely due to the amount of water either in the soil or in the air. So the spring, like April, is the hottest, driest time of the year. And there's not new plant growth out there in Arandas, like what we think of as spring. But in the fall because there's a rainy season in the summer, in the fall after the rainy season is when you get way more water in the soil, which means way more water content in the agave plant itself, which will change the Brix levels and impact the way that plant's going to ferment. And then there's also way more humidity in the air and a totally different temperature and seasonality to the pollen and everything in the air. So by picking those two fall spring points, you get two radically different terroirs from the same place. So you can showcase the only difference is it's the same field, same everything, just harvested and produced at two different times of the year. And our spring batch, if you can get our original spring batch and compare it to that fall batch, are very different. I will say, sadly, to listeners, we did not produce a spring 2025 batch because of the tariff threats. I had to batten down the hatches and I was terrified that we were going to get. So it's on the back of the neck label. If you turn just right, it should say either fall or spring.
Spring of 24.
Okay, nice. So that's the first ever release of that. And the spring brings out way more pepper notes, way more like green vegetal notes, and the fall has way more baking spice, sweetness. It's just really interesting to compare them. We did not produce a spring 2025, sadly, due to the tariff threats, I had to preserve cash. I was like, if we're going to get hit with tariffs, we have to only focus on producing our core SKUs, Blanco, Repo, and Yeho, because those are what keep the lights on. And that was all happening around when we would have had to go to harvest on the spring batch, and it was a really tough call. I think it was the right call for the business. It sucks not having it, but these are like the operational things that maybe listeners don't want to hear. Is like, well, do I produce our esoteric product that's our least biggest seller, but that's going to tie up like $100,000 in cash at a time when maybe cash is as precious as it's ever been because of the uncertainty? Or do I just hold, not produce, and see what the fuck happens with these tariffs? And that was the decision. And those are the operational decisions. And as a small business, like as some big company, they would probably just do it and produce the batch. But for us, it's like, well, I mean, I don't know if we're going to get hit. At the time, it was like a 20-something% tariff is what Trump was threatening. It's like, we get hit with a 20% tariff, like our business is in disarray. The last thing we can worry about is the nuance of the spring season terroir in our least selling batch. Like, we got to keep the lights on. I got to make payroll. I got a lot of people depending on this. So sadly, we didn't do it. We're looking at our fall batch now because things are looking better. But yeah, that's more than you wanted to hear about Nocturna.
No, honestly, like I told you before, it's a story. Like, I enjoy hearing the story behind the brand. So whether it's the Nocturna or a single barrel or, anything like that, the story behind it is always what fascinates me. And me being, a home brewer by trade, the science behind, everything from distillation to fermentation, like I totally understand it. I get it. And that's what fascinates me about every tequila that I drink. Having now a wheat allergy, I had to give up beer. And my spirit of choice is tequila. Why? Because one, bourbon and whiskey, have the grain aspect to it. So, that's out. But you get to tequila and well-crafted tequila, you don't have to worry about that as much. It's very low in carbs, and there's some other
For sure.
healthier aspects for the demon side of what you're putting in your body, but it's for all intents and purposes probably the healthiest alcohol that you could put into your body.
I agree. And the really fun thing too about tequila is the flavor spectrum. So I'm a foodie at heart, so I love just taste and flavor.
Yep.
And like if we look at like the flavor wheel that like the wine somms and stuff look at, like I mean the variance, or if we looked at it on like a bell curve or something of a distribution of data points, like the variance is so crazy. So it's so fun because there's kind of infinite variance of the category. And it's just truly amazing, even in just the additive free brands. I mean, we don't technically have a recipe. We have like a 50-step process map, but it's just process. It's the same recipe. We're all just using agave water and yeast. And it's just totally wild how different those profiles can come and be. Because like, in wine, they're at least using different varieties of grapes, or mezcal, but like we're using all the same species of agave, and the flavor spectrum is just totally nuts of the different flavors that can come from it. And to me, that's what just keeps me so inherently engaged of like, how can we create something new? Like, or how do we make this better? And I will say, I'm going to preempt a question. I don't know if it was on the list, but what's coming next? Shout out to like something we have coming next. That's really going to blow a lot of people away. I think if you like barrel aged tequilas, is when we got started. I started socking away inventory into barrels because I came from whiskey, and whiskey's all about building up your barrel bank, which takes investing constantly and producing and socking it away into the warehouse, hoping one day you're gonna have a brand that you can use it for. At least you'll figure out how to sell it to somebody else if your brand folds. But we have a new series called Barricas coming out, our Barricas series. It's I think a really pivotal moment for the brand. So we have our Blanco, Repo, Añejo, and Nocturna, our high proof Blanco. We do offer single barrel expressions of our Repo and Añejo. We do those always at cask strength just to showcase not only a single barrel expression, but just to how it actually came from the barrel. And a little bit of that's my whiskey background of just, to me, a single barrel needs to be at cask strength. That's what makes a single barrel a single barrel. But we really just have the core 4 products with the 2 single barrel variants. But not, the Barrica series is a new series we're going to release every fall. And it's going to be exotic cask finishes, namely añejos, unless there's a technicality. It comes in a taller bottle. You can check it out on our Instagram. We're about to start kind of hammering more PR and press on this. But it's a 5-part series for this fall. So this is taking influence from like Buffalo Trace that does their Buffalo Trace antique collection every year, and other great, whiskeys or allocated spirits, or even, Fortaleza does their winter one. There's fun ways of doing like an allocated limited release, but instead of just one thing every year, I like the idea of like a series, because I can't ever commit to just one thing anyways. Like, let's have fun with it. So 2025's release is a 5-part series of exotic cask finish añejos that we put away right when we started the company. We have a couple of first ever dones in tequila or first ever done in spirits. First and foremost, I'll lead with my strongest argument. As I said, we have the first ever Mizunara cask aged añejo. We've aged this for over 18 months in Japanese Mizunara oak that I imported from Japan to Mexico. These are the Ferrari or Lamborghinis of barrels. They cost 25 times more than a French oak barrel, which is about, the French oak barrel is 2 times more than an American oak barrel. These things were damn expensive, and I spent a stupid amount of money on them, but they're amazing. And we've aged them for now over 18 months. We're going to bottle that at cask strength. First ever tequila añejo in the world ever done in Japanese Mizunara. Next,
That's
we
going to be
have,
amazing.
it is freaking amazing, actually. And we're going to sock away a few of the barrels to go to extra añejo. Next, we have the first ever commercialized spirit of any category aged in pearwood barrels. So we found a producer in Jura, France, along the Swiss-French border, that was harvesting pearwood and making furniture out of it. And we had a cooper take some of those planks that they were cutting and make them into staves and make barrels. On the first run, the cooper could only make 3 barrels for me. So the first release is literally just 3 barrels, which is an insanely small amount of volume of liquid, but we got a bunch more in now. So next year and years forward, we'll have this again. But we have a Reposado aged for 15 months in pearwood. It cannot be called añejo because to be añejo, it has to age in an oak vessel, an oak barrel of no greater than 600 liters. And so we did a 4-month American oak Reposado that we then put into these French pearwood casks for over a year. It could have tasted terrible. I honestly thought like there's a 50-50 chance this is drinkable or not, just because no one's ages stuff and things other than oak. It turns out it's amazing, and somehow it actually tastes like pears. Sometimes the wood and the fruit wouldn't necessarily taste the same. It's incredible. That's the sleeper of the release. We also have 18-month Vino de Naranja cask añejo that we've aged in dessert wine, which is a dessert orange wine from the Sherry region of Andalusia, France. We have a ruby port cask, which is really nice. Most port cask finishes use tawny port, which is popular in whiskey, but tawny port's a really old aged port and brings out like heavy nuttiness. The ruby port, well, if you're going to go buy a port to drink after dinner, get yourself a tawny port. Ruby port's a little cheaper, but in terms of a finishing cask, it brings out a way more interesting element of the actual fruit itself of the grape, kind of married with some of the nuttiness from a tawny. So as a finishing cask, I like the ruby more. We're not going to do a Rosa, I don't think, but this is our closest thing to a Rosa. It is kind of reddish hue. just because of the port cask. That one's pretty damn interesting as well. We also have a Calvados cask. Calvados is an apple pear brandy from Normandy, France.
Ooh.
That one's just amazing. The baking spice is the apple. It's really the apple note that shows through there. Is just incredible. Was that 5 or did I skip one? I probably skipped one.
That maybe
It might have been 5. Anyways,
yeah, I think you're
there's
right.
the
at 5.
alcohol. There's the alcohol coming through. So that's our release. That's our first release. That's the Barricas series. Barricas means casks in Spanish. And so it is an exotic cask series that also gives us the flexibility of doing all kinds of cool stuff in the future. I have some really crazy shit coming later. One thing I love is sourcing barrels from all over the world. And I have a barrel guy. I want his job. He just travels the world, not for me, but for the industry, just finding exotic finishing casks.
Nice.
Anyways, Rob has found some really crazy stuff. So I put him on like the hunt of like, find stuff that's never been done before and let me buy the exclusive rights to where no one else can do it. And so we got some really, really crazy stuff coming down the pike too later. So we're going to be constantly innovating, and then things can get totally crazy later if we ever start blending that stuff. But for right now, each expression is so incredibly unique. It would kind of be a travesty not to showcase it by itself, at least first.
That's amazing. And I can't wait for those releases to come out. How many states are you in now, and where can everybody find you on social media?
Yeah, we're in like 24 states. We're going to pick up another 4 this fall. Goal is to be in all 50. Give me like 18 to 20 months. Check us out on social media at Alma Del Jaguar or Alma Del Jaguar if you speak Spanish. almadeljaguar.com or almadeljaguar.com is our website. You can purchase merch. You can look at our distribution map. You can look at our store locator there. We'd appreciate it if you signed up to our newsletter, and just appreciate all the support, man.
Well, McCauley, I appreciate your time and thank you so much for being on the show. Everyone, thank you. Have a great night and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, Matt.